Hey everyone, welcome back to Chapters and Chuckles by Kaye, where we dive into the Bible chapter by chapter. In our last episode, we witnessed 9 rounds of the epic showdown between Moses and Pharaoh. Plagues flying left and right, Pharaoh's heart harder than a day-old bagel. Well, hold on to your seats and your firstborns because today's episode covers Exodus 11 to 15 and it's the grand finale of the Exodus Escape saga. Expect midnight drama, a hurried midnight snack, aka the first Passover, a high speed chariot chase, and a water miracle that's one for the ages. So grab you a drink and just have water today because it's too early and I already had my coffee. So just water, get cozy, and let's dive in. All right, chapter 11, the final warning. So Moses stands one more in Pharaoh's palace, staff in hand, eyes blazing. Um, this is final showdown time. The Lord has told Moses of one last plague, the big one, that will finally break Pharaoh's will. Moses delivers the warning with dramatic flair. So around midnight, something terribly holy is going to happen. Every firstborn in Egypt will die, from Pharaoh's own heir to the lowliest servant's child, even the firstborn of livestock. This will be loud, or there will be loud wailing throughout Egypt, a sound unlike any heard before. Chills. But Moses isn't done. With a stern gaze at Pharaoh, he adds, perhaps with a bit of I told you so in his voice, saying, meanwhile, among the Israelites, not even a dog will growl at us. Total peace, and your officials will bow to me, begging us to leave. And leave we will. So Pharaoh's jaw tightens, but he says nothing. Moses, angry at Pharaoh's stubbornness, storms out of the palace, cloak swishing dramatically. The stage is set. The last plague is coming, whether Pharaoh likes it or not. So, behind the scenes, God gives Moses and Aaron some curious instruction for the Israelite families. Go ask your Egyptian neighbors for their gold and silver jewelry. Strange as it sounds, the Israelites do it, and the Egyptians surprisingly hand over their valuables without protest. But you know what? After 9 plagues, the Egyptians probably learned not to mess with the God of Israel. Consider this reparation for centuries of slavery delivered in gold bangles and necklaces. In fact, Moses has become something of a celebrity in Egypt, a man of great importance in the sight of Pharaoh's officials and the people. Who could have imagined the once exiled Hebrew shepherd is now respected and even by his oppressors? As chapter 11 closes, Pharaoh remains as unmoved as a statue. The Lord notes to Moses that Pharaoh's heart is still hard, but this too serves as purpose. It means God's wonders will reach their fullest display, a divine dramatic buildup, if you will. So everyone braces themselves for what's coming. The Israelites huddle in their homes, nervously trusting Moses' word. And the Egyptians, they can sense something ominous in the air that, in the air of that Egyptian night. So sometimes people only learn the hard way. Oh, excuse me. Oh, came out of nowhere. So, anyways, sometimes people only learn the hard way. Pharaoh's pride wouldn't let him listen until devastation hit home. This chapter challenges us. Do we heed warnings and guidance before crisis strikes? God's desire was to deliver his people, but Pharaoh's stubbornness made the road much harder. Humility to listen can spare us and others a world of pain. All right, fun fact corner. Ever wonder about that line? Not even a dog shall growl at the Israelites. So in this text in ancient Egypt, dogs were often guards or used in rituals. The phrase meant Israel would be so protected that even the neighborhood watchdog would be quiet. It's a poetic way to say God's people will be untouched, total peace, while Egypt faced turmoil. Like, talk about divine distinction. And that is it for chapter 11. All right, chapter 12, the Passover, a midnight to remember. This chapter opens with God's special instructions for a night that will change history. It's so important that God literally resets the calendar. This month will be the first month of the year for you, he says. New Year's in spring. Sure, I know. God's doing a new thing. So Moses gathers the elders of Israel and relays the plan for the first Passover. And it's a detailed dinner prep holy edition. So each family is to take a perfect 1 year old lamb, keep it until the 14th day of the month. Then at twilight, everyone slaughters their lamb. Then comes the sign of salvation. Take some of the lamb's blood and smear it on the doorpost and lintel of the house. So yeah, it's messy and strange, but it's critical because that very night God will move through Egypt, and the blood on the door will be the sign that causes the Lord to pass over the house, sparing the firstborn inside. Hence the name Passover. Inside their homes, the Israelites must roast the lamb, no boiling, and definitely no raw lamb meat whatsoever. This is a holy meal, not a foodie experiment. Um, they eat it with unleavened bread, which is just flat bread made without yeast and bitter herbs as your seasoning. The menu has meaning. The bitter herb symbolizes their bitter slavery, and the unleavened bread, that's fast food, no time to let dough rise when deliverance is at the door. In fact, God says, "Eat ready to travel." Loins girded. That's Bible speak for tuck in your cloak and tie your belt. Sandals on and staff in hand. Eat in a hurry. It's the Lord's Passover. So picture the scene: families, huddled around the table, fully dressed as if for a journey, munching on flatbread and roast lamb with one eye on the clock. It's tense, surreal, and sacred. And then midnight strikes, and pandemonium erupts in Egypt. Exactly as warned, the Lord's final plague sweeps across the land. In every Egyptian household, the eldest child, the pride and hope of the family, suddenly dies, as well as the firstborn of their animals. So, from the humblest servant's hut to Pharaoh's palace, a terrible cry of grief rises. A loud cry in Egypt, for there was not a house without someone dead. The devastation is unimaginable. Pharaoh bolts upright in bed, heart pounding, and in the dark night, he finally breaks. He summons Moses and Aaron urgently, perhaps even trembling, and, you know, croaks out essentially, "Go, go, leave my people. You and all the Israelites, take your flocks and herds, just as you've asked, and bless me too." Ironic last request and kind of crazy. Anyways, the man who refused to acknowledge Israel's God now pleads for a parting blessing. Talk about a humbling defeat for Pharaoh's ego. Um, the Egyptians, meanwhile, practically push the Israelites out. Hurry, go before we all die, they beg. In the pre-dawn hours, the Israelites pour out their homes, elbows of their shoulders, wrapped in cloaks. They don't even wait for the dough to rise. Those flour tortillas will have to do for bread. There's no Uber. There's no time to waste. Families stick together. Tribes assemble. Children are rubbing sleepy eyes. Parents are making head counts. Livestock are herded into lines. It's both chaotic and miraculous. In a rush, the Israelites also collect the parting gifts from Egyptians: gold, silver, and clothing that the Egyptians willingly handed over. The Bible says, "So they plundered the Egyptians on their way out without a fight." After centuries of unpaid labor, God makes it sure his people don't leave empty-handed. They're literally walking out of slavery loaded with treasure. By dawn, a massive line of people is on the move. We're talking about a huge crowd here, about 600,000 Israelite men on foot, plus women and children. Um, Modern estimation, perhaps 2 million people total, plus all those, sheep, goats, and cows. It's an enormous caravan. Um, Moreover, a mixed crowd of other folks join in the exodus too, possibly other enslaved peoples or Egyptians who learned that Israel's God means business. What a sight! A stream of humanity and animals stretching out to the city of Ramses, heading southeast. They make their first stop at a place called um, Succoth, still within Egypt's border, to regroup. The air is electric with emotion, relief, jubilation, and no doubt some nerves. Mixed feelings. Mixed feelings. After all, freedom is uncharted territory for these former slaves. They've been enslaved for a long time. So, yeah, they probably don't even know what to feel. But before moving on, God establishes one more lasting ordinance: the festival of unleavened bread. So every year at this Same time, the Israelites are to commemorate their rushed escape by removing all yeast from their houses for 7 days and eating only unleavened bread. It's a perpetual reminder of how God delivered them in haste. And God gives rules for the Passover meal in the future. It's sacred, not for foreigners unless they join the covenant through circumcision. No leftovers and no broken bones of the lamb. The people listened and died. These traditions will become core to their identity. By the end of chapter 12, the Exodus has officially begun. That very day, the Lord brought the Israelites out of Egypt, company by company. The night of sorrow for Egypt has become a night of liberation for Israel. Um, they match. They march into the unknown wilderness, trusting the God who proved stronger than all the gods of Egypt. So, Passover night shows the power of obedience and faith. The Israelites marked their doors with blood and trusted God's promise of protection. It seemed strange, but salvation often does, actually. This ancient event points forward to an even greater salvation in the future. It invites us to trust God's provision even when instructions seem odd, and remember his deliverance in our lives. Also, notice God turned a meal into a memorial. Eating bread without yeast might seem trivial, but it kept the story alive for generations. Sometimes the simplest traditions done in faith carry the deepest truths. All right, fun fact corner. The Israelites lived in Egypt exactly 430 years before the Exodus. So this duration was even hinted at generations earlier. In Genesis, God told Abraham his descendants would be strangers in a foreign land for 400 years. And in the New Testament, Paul mentions the 430-year span in Galatians 3, verse 17, when discussing God's covenant. So the clock was ticking the whole time. Also, Passover in Hebrew is Pesach, meaning to pass over or to spare. Jewish families to this day celebrate Passover each spring with a special Seder meal, eating unleavened bread, which is called matzah now, I think, and bitter herbs, and retelling this very story. It's one of the world's oldest continuous observed holiday, like to this day, and stemming from the night in Exodus 12. That was like a long time ago. How's that for a long lasting celebration, which is, what God wanted to, for us to commemorate this event every year in springtime. And that is it for chapter 12. All right, so chapter 13, from slavery to safari, preparations and departure. So, free at last, the Israelites are now officially ex-slaves on a road trip with God. This chapter begins with the Lord speaking to Moses amid the bustling camp at Succoth. God says, "Consecrate to me all the firstborn. Every firstborn male, human or animals, now belong to God in a special way." Why? It's a constant reminder that God spared Israel's firstborn during the Passover. So picture an Israelite dad hugging his eldest son, a little tighter upon hearing this command. Knowing your little son is alive by God's mercy and um, thus dedicated to God's service. Moses later explains that firstborn animals will be sacrificed or redeemed, and firstborn sons will be redeemed by sacrifices. It's a way of saying thank you to God for that deliverance woven into their everyday life going forward. Next, Moses gives the people a pep talk about remembering this day. He practically says, "Don't forget this, folks, the day you left Egypt. Mark it on your calendars forever." They are to observe the Feast of Unleavened Bread every year at this time, eat flatbread for 7 days, avoid anything with yeast, and tell their children. We do this because of what the Lord did for us when we came out of Egypt. In fact, Moses says these rituals will be like a sign on your hand and reminder on your forehead of God's law. Later generations took that literally with, just literally. Essentially, Moses is instituting story time tradition every year. Act out the Exodus story with this mini diet and ceremony, so you never forget where you came from. So, good call, Moses. Like, humans have short memories, and miracles can be oddly easy to forget for some reason. But in this way, we remember. So, now with spiritual instructions given, it's back to the journey. The caravan sets off from Sukkot. God himself leads the way, but interestingly, he chooses a detour. Most direct route to Canaan, the promised land, would have been along the coast through the Philistine territory. A few weeks travel at most. But God knows these people just escaped 400 plus years of servitude. They're not exactly battle hardened warriors, and a sudden war with the Philistine might send them running back to Egypt in fear. So God says nope to the highway and leads them on the scenic route um, through the wilderness toward the Red Sea. It's longer and seemingly out of the way, but it's safer for their hearts. Sometimes the long road is God's road when we're not ready for the battles on the short road. That's why I like playing the long game on a lot of things that happen in my life, and I'm very patient as well. So picture this. Instead of a straight northeast path, the Israelites turned southward into the wild open deserts. The dust is flying, the sheep are bleeding, and kids are asking, "Are we there yet?" Answer is not even close. But don't worry, they are not lost. To guide this massive crowd, the Lord provides a one of a kind GPS, a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. Like, how incredible is that? So by day, a towering column of cloud goes ahead of them, like a divine smoke signal showing the road. By night, it transforms into a growing pillar of fire, illuminating the camp and path. No batteries needed, and impossible to miss. This way, they can travel by day or night as needed. And imagine the oohs and ahs from children seeing this fire night light. I mean, even me as an adult in my 30s, I'm like just imagining it. I'm like, wow, in awe. But so it's both awesome and comforting. God's very presence in a visible, very, very visible and amazing form, like a cosmic camp counselor leading his group. The pillar never leaves its place in front of the people. Like, talk about the ultimate guided tour. Amid the excitement, Moses remembers something important, or rather, someone, who is Joseph. Yes, that Joseph, that famous great grandson of Abraham who had saved Egypt from famine and brought his family there in the first place. Joseph had died centuries earlier, but before he did, he made the Israelites swear to carry his bones back to the promised land when God delivered them. Moses keeps that ancient promise. So somewhere in this caravan, there's a mummy-sized package or coffin, I don't know, containing Joseph's remains, being carefully transported out of Egypt. It's a moving scene of continuity. Joseph initiated the move to Egypt, and now he's symbolically leading them out. Uh, so Moses might have assigned, I don't know, just a fun image to imagine. Moses probably assigned a couple of strong guys to the bone brigade carrying Joseph's bones with um due reverence. Joseph is, in a sense, going home after 430 years. Like, talk about a late baggage claim. By the chapter's end, the people are marching free, guided by God's cloud fire thing, carrying their ancestors' legacy and headed into the unknown. No one said freedom would be easy. Actually, we're still, even now, especially now, we're still fighting for our freedom, unfortunately. Um, And as we're about to see, an unexpected test is looming on the horizon, or rather, behind them. But for now, spirits are high. After all, how many former slaves get escorted by divine presence on their journey? This group can truly chant, the Lord is with us, literally and literally, like you can see, in that form, cloud fire form. We see God's tender care in how He leads Israel. He knows their weaknesses and steers them away from battles they can't handle yet. That's why when we want something, could be a job or family, kids, a house, and it's not happening yet, maybe God is saying that we're not ready for those big things yet. So He's steering us away because we're either not financially ready, we're not matured enough, or whatever it is, we're not quite ready yet, and God knows that's why. Whatever you want and it's taking a long time, maybe God is saying you're not ready for that yet. So, just something to think about. So, in our lives too, a scenic route detour might actually be God protecting us from trials we aren't ready for. Trust his route. Also, the Israelites carried Joseph's bones as a token of hope, a tangible reminder of God's promise to bring them to a better land. What tokens of hope do you carry on your journey? Perhaps a scripture, a testimony, or a lesson, from a forebear. Don't forget the the faithfulness of generations past. It can fuel your faith for the future. All right, fun fact corner. That pillar of cloud and fire, scholars know it's a manifestation of God's presence, often called the Shekinah, meaning Hebrew, or it's a Hebrew for dwelling or God's glory. It stays with Israel all throughout their wilderness wandering. In fact, it later settles over the tabernacle when they built it. Also, a little trivia: the Red Sea in Hebrew is called Yam Suf, which can mean Sea of Reeds. Something the Israelites may have crossed a smaller body of water in the region of the modern Suez Canal or a lake. But whatever exact spot God chose, the miracle was the same. Water parted and falls of water stood upright. And this is, I apologize, if you don't know, let's spoiler on the next chapter, which I'm about to go over anyways. Another tidbit, Exodus 13, verse 18, in some translation says, the Israelites went out armed for battle or in battle formation. They looked like an army, even though they hadn't fought anyone yet. God was starting to shape this large family into a nation ready to stand together. Boot camp was about to begin, courtesy of the upcoming challenges. All right, that is it for chapter 13. Okay, chapter 14, The Great Escape, Crossing the Red Sea. The journey so far has been surprisingly smooth. Did I say journey? Journey. Maybe even too smooth. And indeed, chapter 14 cranks up the drama. Pharaoh in his palace is having the world's worst case of buyer's remorse, or rather, slave owners' remorse. As the dust settles in Egypt, Pharaoh and his officials realize, what have we done? We just let our entire labor force go. Well, with grief turning to rage, Pharaoh changes his mind yet again. He rallies his army and prepares his chariot. Not just one chariot, his royal war chariot, and he's not coming alone. Pharaoh mobilizes 600 of his best chariots, plus all the other chariots of Egypt, each with officers. Basically, the entire Egyptian army, horses, chariots, foot soldiers, thunders out in pursuit of the Israelites. The ground trembles, dust clouds billow behind the fiercest military force of the ancient world. Meanwhile, God has given Moses an unusual camping directive. Instead of pressing further into the desert, he tells them to turn back and camp by the sea, near a place called Pi. I have a hard time pronouncing this. Pi Hahireth, opposite of Baal Zephon. It seems like a random dead end location, mountains or wilderness on two sides, the sea on another. But God has a strategy, because God is the best strategist ever. He's luring Pharaoh into a trap. Sure enough, from Pharaoh's viewpoint, the Israelites look confused and trapped by the wilderness, exactly as God predicted. So Pharaoh's thinking, aha, they're wandering aimlessly and have nowhere to go. Easy pickings. He's so eager to recapture them that he walks right into the divine ambush. He doesn't even know, and even the Israelites don't know. Nobody is in the know of God's strategy. But Pharaoh, he never learns. So as Pharaoh's army closes in, the Israelites spot the cloud of chariot on the horizon behind them. The sun glints off Egyptian armor. It's a terrifying sight. Panic spreads through the camp like wildfire. Men, women, and children all realize Pharaoh is coming, and they're cornered by the sea with nowhere to go. They cry out to the Lord, and then they turn on poor Moses. What, there weren't enough graves in Egypt, so you brought us out here to die? They exclaim, dripping with sarcasm. That famous line, is it because there were no graves in Egypt that you have taken us away to die in the wilderness? That is quintessential Israelite snark. In truth, Egypt was famous for its graves and pyramids, so they're, it's like a dark humor, I guess. We could have died just fine back there. Thank you very much, they continued. Didn't we tell you to leave us alone in Egypt? We like serving the Egyptians. Better a slave than a corpse in the desert. Like, talk about a change of tune. Like, after all the miracles of God that you have experienced and seen, you still doubt? But, fear has made them nostalgic for slavery, and they're unloading all their anxieties on Moses. So Moses, however, stands firm like an anchor in the storm. In what must be one of the most epic pep talks in history, he shouts back over to the crowd, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. The Egyptians you see today will never see. You will never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You only need to be still." Like, imagine the hush that falls over the people as Moses' voice echoes off the cliffs. Like, the Lord will fight for you. You only need to be still. And that still applies today. Whatever you're going through, the Lord will fight for you. You only need to be still. So Moses doesn't know how God will save them, but Moses knows who will do it, and that's enough. Just have faith. Now, God speaks to Moses essentially, "Why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to move forward. There's a time to pray and a time to act. Now it's go time." So God lays out the plan. Moses is to raise his staff and stretch his hand over the sea, and it will divide. So the Israelites can go through on dry ground. Meanwhile, God will harden the hearts of the Egyptians to charge in after them. And God will get glory through the defeat of Pharaoh's army. Moses takes a deep breath, grasps what's about to happen, and prepares to obey. But first, something awesome occurs. The angel of God and the pillars of cloud move from ahead of Israel to behind them, coming between the Israelites and the Egyptian pursuers. So on Israelite side, the cloud glows with light, illuminating their camp through the night. On the Egyptian side, it brings deep darkness and confusion. Basically, God Himself stands in the gap as a shield. All night, neither side comes near the other. It's a divine pause button, giving Israel a time to execute God's rescue plan. Under God's direction, Moses steps up to the shoreline. He stretches out his staff and hand over the vast sea. Then, all through the night, the Lord drives back the sea with a strong east wind. The waters churn and heap up, forming two towering walls of water left and right. In between where there was deep water, now there was a deep seabed, forming a path right across the far shore. The imagery is spectacular. Like, I'm having goosebumps right now, if you can see. Oh, so imagine standing where waves once crashed and now seeing water piled up like transparent walls beside you, like maybe fish flopping in confusion, maybe peeking out, only to get very confused at the sudden air. The ground underfoot is dry enough to walk on, not even muddy. This is the miracle of miracles for Israel. Like, after this, nobody should have zero doubt of God, no matter what happens to you. But unfortunately, people be peopling sometimes. Anyway, so their ultimate escape route literally opened by the hand of God. With shouts of amazement, Moses leads the Israelites into the seabed highway. The entire nation, hundreds of thousands of people with carts, animals, and tents, stream through the sea in the dark of night, probably with eyes wide, mouth open, and hearts pounding in awe and fear and all the emotions. Like, keep moving. Don't gawk too long at the fish. The pillar of fire lights their way, making the wet walls glisten. Must have felt like stepping to another world, a place only God could create. Eventually, the Egyptians overcome their supernatural darkness and realize what's happened. Their slaves are escaping through the sea. In a fury and mindless lack of self-preservation, Pharaoh yells, "Charge!" His entire army drives into the parted sea after Israel. Horses gallop down the dry sea channel, chariots roll in hot pursuit. You can almost hear Pharaoh thinking, if they can do it, we can do it too. We'll catch him in no time. He is just, ugh. But chasing God's people into the midst of God's miracle, that is a very, 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 very bad idea. Pharaoh, bad idea. Ugh. You'd think he would learn at this point, but I think it's not even like pride anymore, honestly. It's just stupidity. But in the pre-dawn hours, the morning watch, as the last of Israel steps onto the far bank, the Lord looks down from the pillar of fire and clouds at the Egyptian army. Then divine panic hits the Egyptians. God clogs their chariot wheels and twists them, making them drive with difficulty. Wheels start falling off, axles drag, The Egyptians suddenly realize this is a suicide mission. Let's get out of here, they shout. The Lord is fighting for them against us. Finally, they get it. Yahweh is not a deity to be trifled with. He's God. But you know what? It's too late. I mean, they should have known that from the start. They should have. So on the far side of all Israel is now has exited the seabed. The very moment the last sandal steps onto solid ground, the Lord gives Moses another command. Stretch out your hand over the sea so the waters may flow back. Moses obeys, stretching his hand out once more, and dawn breaks over the horizon. The sea returns to its normal state. The walls of water collapse with a thunderous roar. Chariots, horses, soldiers, the entire Egyptian host that had raced into the path are swallowed by the furious waters. The waves of victory is literally a wave. Pharaoh's proud chariots are no match for God's ocean power. One moment they're pursuing, the next they're flailing in torrents of water. Not one of them survives. As the sun rises, the Israelites look out and see the bodies of the Egyptian army washing up on the shore. A solemn hush falls. The threat that loomed so large is gone in an instant. The mightiest empire, the empire's army, has become, well, fish food. Israel stands there, drenched in the morning light and realization, we're free, truly free. The Bible says, thus the Lord saved Israel that day from the Egyptians, and Israel saw the Egyptians dead on the seashore. There is both relief and a sober fear. They now deeply revere the Lord and also have a newfound respect for Moses, God's servant. A few hours ago, they were ready to stone Moses. Now they're ready to trust him. Amazing that walking through an ocean, or what walking through an ocean can do for a leader's credibility. But I mean, they should have trusted from the beginning after seeing all those plagues. But I don't know why they still doubted. Like I said, people be peopling sometimes, and it's annoying. This is a climactic um victory of the Exodus, a salvation through water that they will recount for centuries to come. The slaves did nothing but trust and walk. God did all the fighting. The Egyptian forces, symbols of oppression, are gone without Israel swinging a single sword. The scene closes with a victorious note. Perhaps some Israelites are laughing and crying at the same time, hugging their children, awestruck at the power of and love of their God. On the distant Egyptian shore, Pharaoh has lost everything: his workforce, his army, and his pride. Everything. And that's what happens when, you know, you're not smart. And yeah. So the crossing of the Red Sea is often seen as a metaphor for salvation and baptism. Israel went through water from death to life, from slavery to freedom, purely by God's grace and power. We all face impossible seas in life, where we feel trapped by circumstances or pursued by our past. This story reminds us that God makes a way where there is no way. When we're up against the wall or the waves, it's not time to give in to fear. It's time to stand firm and see the salvation of the Lord. Of course, standing firm doesn't mean doing nothing. Israel had to step forward in faith onto the seabed, but the heavy lifting, or water lifting in this case, is God's job. Trusting Him to fight for you in the battles you cannot win on your own. So trust Him to fight for you. Period. All right, fun fact corner. In the movie, The Ten Commandments, the one that was from 1956 with Charlton Heston as Moses, the parting of the Red Sea was a groundbreaking special effect. They used huge water tanks and jello to get the right look of water walls. But the real event needs no Hollywood magic. Plus, that movie was from a long time ago. You know, the Red Sea crossing is mentioned many times elsewhere in the Bible. It's in the Psalms as a favorite miracle. So see Psalm 106 and 136. And even the prophet Isaiah and the apostle Paul refer to it. Also, archaeologists and explorers have speculated about which exact route and body of water was crossed. Some think it could be the Gulf of Suez. Others, now Dry Lake. Yet the exact location remains uncertain. Perhaps so it stays clear that it was God's act, not a fluke of nature. Another fun tidbit in Exodus 14, verse 14, Moses, during Moses' pep talk, is a popular memory verse. The Lord will fight for you. You only have to be still. So many people have that on coffee mugs or wall art. I mean, it's a really good verse. It helps with your anxiety and everything. It makes you strong. Um, yeah. So when life gets chaotic, that sometimes we need to chill and let God handle it. That is it for chapter 14. All right. Chapter 15, songs and celebrations and some bitter water. Um, if chapter 14 was an action movie, this one is a musical finale. The Israelites may have made it, safely across the sea, and the first thing they do is burst into song. The very first worship song recorded in scripture, often called the Song of the Sea or Song of Moses. Imagine thousands of voices, men and women, young and old, lifting a triumphal, melody under the open sky. Um, so the lyrics go something like this. I'm paraphrasing for for my storytelling. I will sing to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. Horse and rider he has thrown into the sea. The Lord is my strength and my might, and he has become my salvation. This is my God, and I will praise him, my father's God, and I will exalt him. The Lord is a warrior, Yahweh is his name. Pharaoh's chariots and his army he cast into the sea. His elite officers sank like a stone in the Red Sea. Your right hand, O Lord, majestic in power, shattered the enemy. Who is like you, O Lord, among the gods? Who is like you, majestic in holiness, awesome in splendor, doing wonders? You stretch out your right hand, the earth swallowed your foes. In your steadfast love, you led the people you redeemed. In your strength, you guide them to your holy abode. So if you want to read it's on Exodus 15, chapters 1 through 13. So the song goes on, praising God for what he did and even looking forward prophetically, singing about how the peoples of Canaan will hear and tremble and how God will bring Israel into the promised land. The refrain might be familiar because it's echoed in many songs today, like Sing to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. Horse and rider he has thrown into the sea. This is a full-on victory celebration. It's like a spontaneous dance party on the beach with lyrics exalting God as the ultimate warrior and deliverer. And speaking of dance party, enter Miriam. You remember her? She's Moses' big sister. So Moses' older sister, the prophet, and resident tambourine expert, grabs a tambourine and leads the women in music and dancing. I'm having goosebumps. Miriam sings back the chorus, sing to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. The horse and rider he's thrown into the sea. The women follow her in a line dance, tambourines jingling, feet stomping the sand. Probably, I can't even explain. But remember, Miriam is the same sister who watched baby Moses float in a basket and arrange his rescue. Now she's witnessing Moses lead an entire nation to freedom. Like, what a moment of personal and communal joy for her. Like, this joyful worship session is an important pause. It shows that when God moves mightily, the right response is praise, always. Praise and worship. It's like how Abraham did and all, those patriarchal figures. Anyways, the Israelites are not rushing off. Hi, you scared me. What is that? All right, I'm back. I don't know where I am anymore, but so this joyful worship session is an important pause. It shows that when God moves mightily, the right response is praise, as I've said. Always praise. Praise and worship, praise and worship. The Israelites aren't rushing off immediately. They stop and thank the one who made it all possible. The Song of Moses in Exodus 15 is so significant that the Bible will reference it even at the very end of Revelation. So not bad for something composed on the spot in the desert. After the confetti and chorus die down, the journey resumes. The Israelites pick up their belongings, maybe still humming that tune, and follow Moses into the wilderness of Shur. And here comes the next challenge: water. The Middle Eastern sun is beating down, and after 3 days trekking through desert, the water supplies from Egypt are running very low. So dehydration is setting in. Kids are crying for a sip. Animals are panting. And finally, joy. They come across a spring of water. The place is called Mara, which means bitter. They soon find out why. Exhausted, travelers scoop up the water to drink only to spit it out with disgust. It's bitter, undrinkable. It's like a cruel joke, an oasis that isn't actually helpful. The people's mood, which was sky high after the Red Sea miracle, now crashes to a low. Despair and frustration bubble up. They grumble against Moses, a favorite pastime, it seems. What are we going to drink? There's panic in their voices. After all, water is life, and there is none to be had. How quickly they forget God's power that split us the little adversity, and they're ready to riot again. Like I said, people be peopling. So Moses, to his credit, does the right thing. He prays. Actually, it says he cried out to the Lord, which suggests Moses himself was anxious. Leaders get thirsty too, but Moses knows exactly who to turn to. God does not disappoint. The Lord shows Moses a piece of wood. Some translations say a tree or a log. God essentially says, "Trust me, throw that water, or throw that into the water." So Moses tosses the wood into the spring, and miraculously the water turns sweet. Why sweet? I don't know, but suddenly the same water everyone gagged on, is crystal clear and refreshing. The people cautiously taste it, and it's good. So cue the sound of 100 camels slurping noisily. Problem solved. Lesson learned. God can provide in ways they cannot imagine. Um, so at Mara, after quenching the thirst, God takes a moment to give Israel a sort of health and obedience lesson. He tells them, if you listen carefully to the Lord your God and do what's right in his eyes, obeying his commands, then I will put none of the diseases on you that I put on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord who heals you. This is God's early reminder that their well being in this harsh journey will depend on trusting him and following his ways. I am Yahweh Rapha, he essentially says, the Lord your healer. Not only did he heal the bitter water, he's able to heal and protect his people. It's like God is saying, stick with me, kid, and you'll be all right. So happily, chapter 15 ends on a sweet note, pun intended. I don't know whether he made the water sweet. I don't know. I need to research what could that mean, or maybe it doesn't really mean anything, but whatever. So the Israelites move on from Mara and come to Elim, which feels like a resort after the wilderness. It has 12 springs of water and 70 palm trees. So you got shades and water. So clear, abundant water and shady palms. Just, what the doctor, or rather the Lord, offered. There's enough spring water for each tribe to claim one, and plenty of dates and shades. They set up camp there by the water and likely take a well-deserved breather. Their families refill their skins, wash off the grime, and rest under rustling palm fronds. After the nonstop drama of the past chapter, Elim is a gracious reprieve. Little do they know, though, more adventure and tests await just around the corner. Because, life is full of tests and challenges. We need them. It creates, it makes and breaks you, but it makes you into, a strong person. Builds character. Um, so as the sun sets on episode 3, picture the Israelite camp at Elim. Children laughing and playing around the spring, elderly folks sitting under palms, telling the tale of Red Sea to anyone who will listen for the 100th time. Moses and Aaron planning next steps, and maybe somewhere you hear a faint melody of the song of the sea being hummed. From slavery to singing, from terror to trust. These chapters have been a roller coaster, and the journey with God has only just begun. So what a contrast. The same people who were dancing one day were grumbling 3 days later. It's a mirror to us, isn't it? Like, how often do we celebrate a victory, then soon after question God at the first sign of trouble? As I've said, people be peopling. So chapter 15 reminds us to carry yesterday's gratitude into today's trials. God didn't part the sea just to abandon Israel in the desert. The God who heals at Mara was teaching them that he cares about their daily needs too. Bitter experiences can turn sweet when we invite God into the situation. Maybe you've had a Mara in life, a bitter season that later, with God's help, became sweet lessons or blessings in disguise. The key is listening to his voice and trusting his provision. Even when you're thirsty and the water seems bitter, All right, so fun fact corner. Miriam's tambourine. Like, ever wonder why the Israelite women had tambourines handy during the Exodus? It suggests they expected God to come through and had instruments ready for praise. In those days, tambourines, often frames with jingling metal, were used for joyous occasions. Miriam is actually called the prophet Miriam here, the first woman with that title in the Bible. Girl power in ancient times. Also, the place called Mara literally means bitter because of the bitter water, while Elim likely means something like terebinth or refers to large trees fitting since it had ample palm trees and water. And how about those numbers at Elim? 12 springs and 70 palms. Those numbers, 17 and 12, will recur in scripture. 12 tribes, 70 elders, etc. So whether the design or by design or providence, the oasis perfectly accommodated the community. Coincidence? We think not. Another interesting note, the Song of Moses in Exodus 15 is one of the oldest recorded songs. And fun twist, there's a second Song of Moses in Deuteronomy 32. Moses was something of a songwriter in his old age. So if anyone tells you the Bible is all, prose and laws, remind them it's also full of music and poetry birthed from real life encounters with God. So the Israelites' epic exit from Egypt is complete, but the adventure is far from over actually. So next up, the open wilderness. How will they find food? What happens when thousands of stomachs start growling? So spoiler, heavenly bread is on the menu. And what about the daunting journey to Mount Sinai where the covenant awaits? One thing's for sure, there will be more challenges, more miracles, and yes, more chuckles, and maybe a few more complaints. Old habits die hard for sure. So this newly freed nation learn to trust their invisible guide? Will manna from heaven satisfy their hunger? And what surprising guest reunion might Moses have before reaching Sinai? So stay tuned for episode 4 of Chapters and Chuckles by Kaye to find out. So, so that's a wrap for Exodus episode 4. What a journey. What a journey. Thank you so much for listening to Chapters and Chuckles by Kaye. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow, subscribe, and leave a review. You can catch new episodes only on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. And until next time, keep laughing. And as always, stay curious.